Welcome to another episode of the Reboot Chronicles, a no-holds-barred forum with global leaders, authors, entrepreneurs, and CEOs about how organizations stay focused on growth and innovation in unprecedented times. I'm your host, Dean Tobias, coming to you live from Reviv's North American headquarters in Chicago, and we would like to thank you for joining us from around the globe today. I'd like to welcome Jeyanayagam, who leads DTC at Clorox, a 109-year-old, almost $7 billion company with about 9,000 employees or so in over 100 markets around the world. I kind of like this brand. It's been around for a long time, obviously longer than you and I, but it's more than 80% of your company's sales are generated from brands that hold the number one and the number two market share positions. And you know what? Not many house of brands companies can say that. Those of you listening in, you use this stuff all the time. Things like, it's not just Clorox bleach, by the way, or pine salt, which I happen to love the way it makes the house smell. Glad bags, Brita, Kingsford, charcoal, my favorite, Fresh Step, those of you that have cats, not to mention all the vitamins and supplements and skincare brands that we'll talk about today. No surprise that fourth quarter, let's just call it revenue, sales were up about 22%. So it's double-digit growth across all segments. And, for many brands like this, it's due to COVID, but mostly also due to lockdown mania that's been going on. So Jackson, I want to welcome you. Would love to start with, you're kind of a hybrid person like me. You've been startups, been big company guy, probably bring a breath of fresh air to big companies, but maybe just talk about your role there. What are you up to? What do you do?
Yeah, well, thank you, Dean, for having me. Appreciate it. So I joined Clorox in January of last year, and I'm the Vice President, General Manager of Direct to Consumer for Clorox. So in that role, essentially, I wear two hats. One, I'm a general manager of my own P&L, which is a big shift coming from a CMO role previously at a startup and coming up in agency life as I did. I wanted to shift to being a P&L owner, and we can talk about that too in terms of career trajectory. I think there's
Smart
a huge opportunity.
Career. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I think too often marketers get kind of pigeonholed and are unable to break out of that CMO function into the CEO role. So for me, it was really important to understand the full scale end to end of the P&L. So I took on the GM role of the pure play DTC only brands. There's only a handful of them, supplement brands within Clorox that they inherited through an acquisition of Nutranext about 3 years ago. But I also play a studio lead. So for those of your listeners who come from CPG or big, kind of Fortune 500 organizations, in the studio role, I don't have purview over P&L, but I'm supporting other GMs, my peers, who run P&Ls in almost every instance, much larger retail brands to help them launch a scale and drive growth on D2C. So I get the best of both worlds, to be quite honest. I get the studio lead role, which is almost like an agency role, which I'm very familiar with, but I'm also a P&L owner with my own brands. So I've been really enjoying it, and it's been a blast.
That's quite a playground you have. I actually like that. The studio role is probably the funnest because it's kind of like taking care of grandkids. You can kind of come in for
and then you a little bit. Yeah, I don't have to have the hard conversations.
Mess up, guys.
Yeah.
You look responsible from that. So let's dig into that. What's going on with, most people don't think Clorox Direct to Consumer, DTC, the acronym, but you've got a lot of brands that have been around for a bit. What's going on there?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the reasons, Dean, I came here was the opportunity, right? I think CPG as a whole are pretty behind. Let's be very honest about it, right? Retailers were already behind, right? Target, Walmart, Kroger, all of them are already behind, and they own the point of sale. They own conversion, and they're behind Amazon and other direct-to-consumer upstarts. So CPGs are even one step removed, right, from the transaction. So the opportunity is pretty massive, and why I joined was for that reason. They believed in it all the way up to the top, to the CEO, to my boss, my manager, in terms of really investing in direct-to-consumer and e-commerce specifically. So for me, it was an opportunity to create a playbook that I would hope would be replicated in classes like yours when professors are teaching about here's how CPGs are evolving and trying to catch up to direct-to-consumer and actually even investing in it to kind of get ahead of the competition. Here's what that playbook looks like. So to me, that was the opportunity. So yeah, most people don't think of Clorox or Johnson & Johnson or Pepsi when they think of direct-to-consumer. But that's actually the massive potential. Obviously, we all know right now what's happening with COVID and Clorox. Clearly, everyone's waiting for disinfectant wipes and cleaning products direct to consumer. But even beyond that, Burt's Bees, Brita, these are products that are naturally lend themselves to being great e-commerce, which they already are on Amazon, but direct to consumer solutions where we can build loyalty and build an experience. So that extends through all the lines, almost all the lines, from wellness to supplements to water, cleaning, and pet.
Right. Yeah, it's no secret why you're on the Reboot Chronicles, because your category needs one badly. And
Yeah.
we've been saying that for like 10 years. So I don't know why it takes so long, but it seems like Clorox has done, I mean, when you look at how you kind of, are kind of taking it into the future, DTC is one strategy. What are the kinds of things you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, I think, anytime I talk about D2C, and I'm sure, you hopefully we share my opinion here, Dean, it's not so much what you sell. Yeah, sure, to some extent it is, but it's the data. It's all the data, the first party data, that
Right.
transactional attributed behavioral data. So Amazon does this better than anyone, right? When you go on Amazon, every action you take, not just a click and purchase, but every action in between that click and purchase is tracked and then associated with you. And then, of course, they're able to learn so much from you, from every hover over to every glimpse, to every thumbnail you click, to every swipe, vertically or laterally, then incorporates behaviors. And the more you do that, the more it tells us about you, right? And then aggregate that to other people who look like you. And that's the power of direct consumer, right? Where you're not going to
Yeah.
get that when you're selling, even on third-party e-commerce. If I sell on Amazon, I'm not getting all that data, right? They're going to give me what they want to give me, and it's probably more than what physical brick and mortar would give me, but it's never the same as what I would get if I run it, owned, and operated. So to me, it's the power of that data and how I can leverage that data to get smarter and to reach consumers and to really talk to them. So I think Clorox is really invested in data and how we get smart with using that, but D2C gives them another layer of that on top of what they were already doing before I got here. And then you couple that with all the other brands we're supporting, right? That clearly have loyalty. And I think for us, loyalty, historically CPGs would depend on the retailers to run the loyalty program, and maybe they get, some kind of data passed back to them. But
Right.
really, it was pretty thin, right? When you do the
Very
Dwayne
thin.
Reed,
Yep.
yeah, you don't get much there. But if we can launch our own loyalty experiences, and loyalty isn't just a loyalty program, it's the unboxing, it's the front end experience, it's the customer service, it's the proactive customer service, not waiting for you to have a problem, but asking you, hey, Dean, you bought with me 3 times. What products would you like to see from us? What flavors would you like to see from us? Let us launch it based on your input. So I think, to me, it's that data and that insight that kind of combine for a great loyalty and owned experience that D2C provides, that Clorox has already been investing in, but now with my team, we were able to add an additional personalized layer to that.
Yeah, those of you that caught his term hover over, be careful what you hover over on Amazon and other sites. Just
Yes,
because you don't click on it doesn't mean they're not tracking you. So
absolutely.
we know what you're looking at. A lot of people are concerned that they devices hear what you say, and the next thing you know, you're seeing ads. And I tell people
Yep.
at cocktail parties, oh, it's actually what you're thinking too. Whatever you're thinking about, you're going to get an ad for it.
Yeah.
We're probably not far from that. But anyway, I digress. Can we dig into a couple categories that you're
Absolutely.
pretty hot on with DTC? So maybe let's start with vitamin supplements. Let's just call it health and wellness as a
Yeah.
category. You've got brands like NeoCell and all kinds of things there. What are you excited
Yeah.
about in that space?
I mean, clearly, Rainbow Light's one of our favorite products. A lot of people, if you knew anyone who's pregnant, or any of your listeners have been pregnant, they probably took the prenatal products from Rainbow Light. It's one of the most popular prenatal products out there. But what most people didn't realize until COVID was that we actually have a great immunity line called Counterattack. It's a kind of a preventative product that you take. I take 2 a day every day. Katy Perry actually shouted out the brand in like March or April on one of her shows, and it became this huge, like, iconic brand for immunity, right? People, like, it was flying off the shelves. And I think,
Especially now, yeah.
oh, right. So that's where I'm especially excited. Immunity, right? We're about to go into the fall, about to go back to school, flu season, kids in school potentially. So, I anticipate immunity to continue to skyrocket. And there was a time actually on Amazon for 2 months, you can get any vitamin C products, you can get any immunity products. And I suspect the same thing will happen in September, October, November, especially if there's no vaccination, which that doesn't look like it's going to happen until next year. Um, I love uh, food products, Dean. I think food products are going to be really, really interesting, only because I think as people think about wellness, not everyone wants to take a pill, right? Now everyone wants to ingest a
Exactly.
capsule. But
Right.
if I can get functional foods that actually give me some additional benefits because I'm not able to buy from an economic standpoint or just taste standpoint, I'm not able to buy or get those products in my body or in my kids' bodies. I would love to be able to get some foods that could taste good, like bites, like granola bites, or beverages or shots, non-liquid liquor shots, but shots. I think there's so
Oh,
many
you
things that
lost
we
me
can
there.
explore there.
Non-liquor, forget it.
Yeah. So
No,
we're doing actually a chocolate product. We have a sleep chocolate
yeah,
that's non-melatonin, and it's one of our best sellers, and people love it.
non-melatonin. Wow.
Non-melatonin, yep, and it's a
What makes
saffron.
you? Oh, saffron. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
saffron. Wow.
So things like
So
that. I think experimental food, functional foods will be awesome in the wellness category.
I totally agree. It's like what you put on your skin and your body is starting to trend with what you put in it. And
Absolutely.
but most of them have like a lot of sweetness in it. They're like over sweetened for at least Americans. Which
Yes.
I'll have one and be like, oh boy.
It's too much, yeah.
Uh,
And then we're trying to find alternatives like, agave, and there's other things you can put in there that, because oftentimes in the past, as a lot of those supplement products, when they try to replace sugar, it
yeah,
was that kind of like stevia, like aftertaste. And like no one likes
you
that
can
either,
say it,
right?
saccharin. Yeah, it was
Yeah,
awful.
right.
It was terrible.
So, it's
And it
horrible.
gave you a headache. It's like, what is
Yeah.
this? Yeah.
So we've been trying to find all natural replacements. And I think there's so much happening in food tech, right? I love food tech as a category. You see what
Massive.
Impossible Foods is doing. If Impossible Foods can do what they've been doing to the meat industry,
Right.
no reason we can't find sugar alternatives that still make things taste good and give you that goodness from a nutrient standpoint as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm on the board of a private equity firm, Monetary Partners,
Hmm.
and the investments there are what we found is that we need more ingredient companies, so mass brands
Yes,
can actually make the shift because most of the mass brands can't scale with this type of thing.
100%. They're gonna have to acquire. They're gonna acquire to get there, right? That's how they're gonna get there.
Yeah, yeah, sometimes. So that kind of dovetails into what you're putting on versus what in your body. So what's going on in things like skincare and more topical things? You've got Burt's Bees. What else do you have? Britta's.
Yep. Neocell,
That's more
Burt's
of a
Bees.
drinking.
Yeah, it's more of a drinking. But yeah, definitely, I think lotions and skincare will be really interesting. And you and I talked before the show. I think CBD skincare is going to be especially interesting. I think as we see more scale, I think right now it's a little bit unregulated. It's a little bit wild, wild west. So you see a lot of products out there, right? And there's a
Yes,
lot of
a lot of
inconsistent rules,
claims.
tons of claims
A
that
lot
should be
of a lot
saying.
of channel people. It's like the old snake oil days. Not that
It,
we
it
were a
really
fan.
is. Oh, I mean, the whole supplements category, we try to be very transparent about it, but there's still a lot of snake oil even in supplements, let alone in CBD. And, with
Yeah,
Google limiting how they let you market, and obviously Facebook, the same thing, and 25, 30 states, it being legal. So you still have half the country that it isn't. You have to be very careful about what you're buying and how much you're paying for it. But I do think that category as a whole, from not just consumable, but actually on your person, on your skin, is going to be a massive opportunity. But I think there's other opportunities in skincare as well. I think there'll be other nutrient supplement forward led products. Like we're going to have a hemp skin lotion pretty soon, probably next month or two, that we're going to launch. I think that'll do pretty well. I've tried it. It's like putting the ocean on your skin. It's really awesome. So I think you'll see a lot more innovation in moisturizers and things like that, as well as we continue to evolve. And the problem will be obviously saturation, right? There's so much out there. Just
there is.
determining who do you trust, which one's right for me, and that it's an age-old issue, right? How do you have the right brand positioning? Branding still matters, right? Marketing still matters, but only if the product works. If the product doesn't work at the end of the day, marketing can't make up for that.
I think you're right. It's integrity. I mean,
Absolutely.
I see these little things like at the beauty salon, at the gas station, and it's usually a guy that just got a little countertop space, and I'm
Yeah.
like, where does this come from?
Yeah.
You just touched on something though that not clear about. So most of the medical grade CBD skin cream is like for arthritis and stuff. It's really powerful, and people say it works. I don't know, but what CBD and hemp you said for just for like skincare? What's the benefit there?
Well, I
Curious.
think I think for the hemp, it's a little bit different, right? It's a much lighter version of it, so the ingredient base doesn't require as much regulations as CBD. So it's just more of a soothing feeling for the
Got it.
ingredient, where CBD is a little bit stronger. And again, there's so many variations, even CBD, right? How much CBD is actually in a product and what's legally allowed, and even the states that do allow it. But for hemp, it's a little bit more of the soothing, and there are some effects I think that are still kind of I won't say unproven, but I don't know if they're substantiated with the proper amount of data yet in terms of what hemp is in term compared to other ingredients. But for me, it's the soothing feeling.
Yep.
CBD, I do think with enough CBD, I think there is a pain. You can't. I won't say it solves pain, but I think it helps ease pain in
Yeah,
some ways. But
mitigates, right.
yes,
Right.
exactly. So I think that will be the key. But I think for a lot of them, it's actually still TBD. To be honest, that's why I think the opportunity is. If, once you figure out what the right amount is, what's legally available, and what you can actually back up with science, I think that's when the opportunity will really present itself. It's not there yet, but I think it will get there very soon.
So yeah, I guess so. If you drill down into your DTC, direct to consumer brands, what are you most excited about with the ones you have now?
I think Burt's Bees is an awesome brand. And if you talk to most people, you probably maybe been one of the same, didn't realize Burt's was owned by Clorox, right? And I think that's probably a good thing in a lot of ways that Burt's has its
And
own
most
identity.
people think chapstick just like they think
Oh
bleach
yeah,
when they say Clorox, they're like
that's right.
bleach. I'm like, no, not
Yep.
bleach. Talking
Yep.
charcoal now. Yeah.
Yep. And Burt's has like 150 other SKUs, right? You mentioned a beauty. They have a ton of great beauty products, a great baby brand. I have two little daughters.
Beautiful
We use
stuff.
Burt's products for all of them. Yeah, I mean,
Yep.
really, really good products that work. Great sustainability story, but they've been around for like 20 plus years or so. And most people think, I mean, I have Dean, I have 13 nephews and nieces between 12 and 21. Every single one of them loves Burt's, and guess what? They think it's a startup. They think it's launched like
They
five
do.
years ago, and it's all D2C. I'm
They've
like, no,
kept the
D2C.
vibe.
Oh,
Yeah, they
it's
kept that
amazing.
vibe going. It's very
Yeah,
smart.
and without a lot of marketing dollars, without being disingenuous to who they are, and of course their sustainability story, they were ahead of the game when before it became trendy, right? They truly cared about giving back to the environment. The bees have now become such a topic for how important the bees are to our environment, but they were talking about this, decades ago. So that one I'm especially excited to continue to scale and build out. They're already on D2C now, but there's so much more we can do, and that's one I'm paying particular attention to. And I think given, I mean, this thing is crosses generations, right? When 13-year-olds and 70-year-olds alike love the brand and buy the brand, that to
So
me is only
rare.
upside. And you can
Yep.
use that lip balm, the chapstick, to your point, the lip balm actually can be the intro to then explore and try other products.
Right. Right. I have a drawer full of chapstick here, and two of them are Burt's Bees, and
There you
they're
go.
usually the ones that are gone. They're empty.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so rare that like kids would want to use something that their fathers and grandfathers
Right.
would use.
It's
That is,
amazing. It's still relevant to them,
and
right?
that startup vibe is interesting. I don't know, not too many brands have pulled it off. Maybe Ben and Jerry's pulled it off for
I
a
was
long
thinking
time.
Ben and Jerry's too. Yeah, they still have
I
their
don't
own
know.
identity, even though
Yeah,
Unilever owns them. They
I
still.
think it crosses boundaries as well in terms of
I
age.
think well, I know a lot of the General Mills folks, and we worked with them closely when I was at Box, my previous startup. And I
Yep.
would say Annie's, who's owned by General Mills, has done a good job of that.
And
They're
it's, yeah,
they're
good one.
very independent. They leave them in Berkeley. They do their own thing. They benefit from the scale of the big company, but they still operate independently. And I think the brands who figure that out, but it's the big CPGs, the big companies that then they acquired an amazing entity for all of its equity, and then they just basically force them into the company. It's like, why would you do that? Like that's the whole beauty of them is that they were over here and doing their own thing. You should let them do their own thing, right? And just
Yeah,
benefit from the scale.
it's called the great. They basically suck the bone marrow out of the companies
That's
that
right.
we have
Yeah.
I do a whole keynote just on that, where people are trying to figure out how do you like dance with startups and how do you partner with them without killing them, and sometimes how do you actually work with them without actually buying them,
Yeah.
which is so foreign to large companies. Like, nah, we're just gonna buy them. I'm like, just gotta stop. I gotta stop you right there. Actually,
I know.
that's a good topic for you. So we we tend to get a little geeky sometimes on the show about how do you approach growth and innovation, which is probably all you think about right now. And one of the matrices, build, buy, borrow. Should you acquire it? Should you, partner with someone else? Should you, just build it in house? And that's
Yep.
becoming less and less of the choice, which is great because it used to be that was the go-to. We're just going to build it, and the CEOs are comfortable saying, "Well, we're just going to acquire this one." I'm like, "Well, what about the third category?" So, how do you approach that? What's your
Yeah, I mean, so I have a lot of thoughts on this topic. I do think historically, at least from a CBG standpoint, what you've seen is what I've seen most CBGs is yes, they acquire, they go buy a Dollar Shave Club for $1 billion, and that's their solution for D2C and digital commerce. And it's like, okay,
yeah?
great, we have the founders, we have the leaders. By the way, most of those founders, I'm not going to say any names, have no interest in staying beyond their exit window, right? They want to have their earn out and then they're gone, right? They're
I
not looking
know.
to do that. They want to start
Yeah,
their own
I
thing.
know them, and I've done that. It's like, yeah,
Yeah, you know exactly what it's like. It's like, why would I? If I could have
even
been a
the earnouts are artificial, and
right,
that wasn't a highly scaled company either. It was an
right.
overpriced
It
asset,
was
but it got
as
them into the
was
game.
it got them into, and as was many of those exits, right? 2 or 3 years ago, you saw 3x, 4x top line, which is an insane multiple. You're not going to see it anymore, in my opinion, right? And not at that level. So I
Not in
think
this
that was one
sector.
solution. No way, no way. Let alone 5, 6x. I think beauty was one of the last few that have been overpaying, in my opinion, for startups. But the other thing is what exactly we said. I think a lot of the CPGs, almost all of them, have some investment arm, right? They either have they're taking a handful of board seats and they're investing 10, 15, $25 million in some early to mid round, and maybe taking a big chunk. I mean, I think I just saw the Care of announcement with Bear and taking a
Yeah.
70% piece of Care of. So I think you'll see a lot more of that because it's easy, it's low risk. To your point, they're trying to learn, take a board seat, or they're creating incubators, right? I think Kraft has an incubator where they have food startups come in and they provide them resources, sales folks, connect them to retailers. So it's a good win-win. I think that's interesting. It's more conservative, but it's a smart strategy. and you see Pepsi investing in e-com. I think what Pepsi's doing and what we're doing is more of the model. It's the hybrid of like, well, I'm not going to completely build it from scratch. I'm going to either invest in something or white label something or acquire something small and then bring in the right people versus I think oftentimes CPGs are like, we have a smart person over here who went to Harvard, got the degree, went to the McKinsey, then came here and started as an assistant brand manager, and now they're a director. Let's put him or her in charge of this. And while they're probably very smart and have the pedigree, that doesn't mean they're necessarily ready to work in a high-flying startup environment within a large CPG. So I think you can have them liaison, but so you guys start bringing in the right talent and make it attractive to come work there. Now, 3 years ago, that was a hard sell to get someone not to go to Allbirds or Way or Everlane or Airbnb. The benefit CPGs now have is, especially in this time, but even before COVID, it was getting really turbulent for startups. As you know, you can grow. I think arguably you can grow a startup pretty easily from 0 to 50 million. Once you get into 75, 100, 200, 300 million, you almost get into this purgatory, D. And I don't know if you've seen this where, okay, you get into a point where, well, does your cap based on your cap table, does it make sense to sell? IPO, you're probably not there yet, maybe not profitable yet, but you're no longer growing at 300, 400% because you hit this certain moment in time. And I think that becomes a challenge, right? You become cash flow restricted depending on your unit economics. And now, if you're working there, you're like, well, what's the point of working here if there's no exit here? I'm not making that much. I've been learning, yes, but now what? Whereas CPGs now, especially in a recession, present this opportunity where I can go to a CPG. I don't have to worry about running out of money in the bank, right? Literally, where 3 months later, they're halting, invoices and they're cutting people's salaries. No, you're probably at a pretty established place that's trying to invest and learn in D2C and startup mentality, and they need people like that. So I think what used to be perceived as like, oh, I don't want to go to a CPG is now could be attractive in the right role if they're truly committing to it. And I think you're starting to see a lot of startup talent, especially now, who've gotten laid off, who are now worried about a WeWork type situation or worried about an Uber type situation where, man, I don't know if I see this path. Look to other opportunities. They're not going to go to consulting. They're not going to go to back to school, but maybe there's an opportunity to come to a big CPG or big company and kind of recreate that environment. And I think this is a huge opportunity for CPGs to get talent they otherwise couldn't.
Yeah, it's an interesting perspective. It doesn't sound good for the aspiring entrepreneurs, but we'll talk about that later. And it all depends on which culture you go to. So you mentioned Kraft. I know a lot about that one. It was kind of an experiment. They have their own corporate venture capital group, and the startup thing, they're totally separate. Then you switch to a Mondelez, who used to be part of the same company.
Yep.
They're, CVC and their, let's just call it startup-y stuff, incubators, accelerators. They're in sync. They work together constantly. They're more synced to product, whereas Kraft, a little more turbulent time over there. But it's all experimental. So it depends on what kind of playground you give them and what type of environment you give them. There's just dozens of ways you can go. What are you finding works for Clorox?
We're lucky because we're a little bit smaller than some of those bigger CPGs, right? Yeah. So while we are very matrixed, we don't have the same issues as a $50 billion CPG, right? As you know, that once you get to that level, it's just much more complicated. So the benefit is less than
$7 billion. You're still like a startup, right?
Yeah, right. In CPG world, right? Less than 10,000 people. That feels small compared to Pepsi or P&G, which is crazy to me. I come from a place
still doing all
people.
hands meeting with 10,000.
I know, right? But I think it truly is the integration, right? So you have to integrate at the right levels. But I will say this, Dee, you can't integrate everything, right? So there are times when we have IT teams, we have HR teams, we have legal teams. They could quickly slow us down. So we have to find the right points to win, or maybe not at all, to integrate with them. But we need to integrate with the right sales folks who are working on Amazon or marketplace sales. We have to work with the right innovation people, but not get dragged into 80-person meetings where it's taking weeks to get the things to get decided. So I think that's the big challenge, Dean, is when do you integrate the right pieces and the right people? And when do you not allow us to kind of operate on an island to some extent and just move fast and take some risks and try new things? I think that's the big one, right? And that's where it can't just be all or nothing. There is a hybrid approach, and it's integrating at the right points and not making it too cumbersome where, I've been in meetings at times where it's like, oh yeah, let's have that meeting, the follow-up in 4 weeks. And in my world, 4 weeks is an eternity. I'm like, 4 weeks? Why don't we just do this
4
now?
4 hours is good for me, yeah.
Right, and let's do this on Slack.
I always say, they would say, well, I don't have time this week. I'm like, how about Saturday? They're like, what? I'm like, Saturday? That comes after Friday? I don't know if you know. It's in my, never mind. It's right between if that's bad, I'm open on Sunday too. Just got to go to church. It's different. I help companies with the Dancing with Startups program, but it's It's a big Foursquare grid, like a good Kellogg guy, but it's really serious stuff about how you approach your culture, because it's all about the people, the platform, the passion, what fits, what doesn't, and we'll literally go through each company. This is why it works here at Google, but it doesn't work very well at Amazon. And no one's right or wrong, but the most popular are embedding entrepreneurs inside the mothership. The other popular grid is separating from the mothership. So taking a new venture. This is how I grew up doing this, spinning them out of the company at a very young age, and see if you can either be physically somewhere else, either closer to a customer, closer to a supply chain, closer to the country or the region, but literally getting the hell out of the cesspool of the culture. Anything over $1 billion is, we call them BFSs, big, fat, and slow. So anything over $1 billion, we found separating from the mothership is actually really good. You still can get resources, but you're just a different animal to the more entrepreneurial community or whoever you're trying to partner with.
Yeah, or where you get talent. So we're actually based in New York, and Clorox didn't have a New York presence. So we are the first New York presence. My whole D2C team is New York. We have remote people in DC. We have them in Oakland and San Fran and throughout the country. Especially our engineers are spread out throughout. But my core team is New York, and Clorox is
because Clorox was always East Bay. It just totally wasn't cool. It was
it was tough. It's tough, right? Even
I
now
go to meetings I'd do like industry meetings in San Francisco, and I was doing my CEO deals out there, and the Clorox guys would all show up in suits. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Like, we're not in the East Bay anymore. So you must be the cool kids in New York then.
It helps a lot, and we just initiated that. So about to close on an office space soon. Hopefully, we'll get to move into it at some point. But the whole team is here remote.
You get a good deal now.
Well, yes, we did. Especially helps to be Clorox versus a startup or versus a company that no one knows, right? Because we're less risky for real estate developers.
So you doing it in the city or Brooklyn? What are you doing?
We're doing it in Manhattan. Yeah, I looked at Brooklyn too, but we're going to be in Manhattan on 30th and 8th.
Nice.
Right by Penn Station. So very excited about that.
And how do you feel about bringing in just outside talent, letting them play and do things, and maybe it doesn't fit your agenda, and the whole thing, discovery, innovation, all that stuff.
To your point earlier, Dean, I think the way it works, the why it's worked for us is this idea of whether we're on an island or connected to the mothership. I think you need a champion. And that's one person who has the right cloud, who's at the executive level or pretty close to it, who is a champion of it, and who's letting me and my team run, but also stay connected, right? So I'm not that champion, right? I'm the guy they brought in from the outside who's building a team, a great startup. And my whole executive team comes from Plated, Jet, Brandless, Bonobo, Slice Pizza, Dashlane. So it's the right kind of experience.
You just lost the whole baby boomer audience right there.
Yeah, I know, right? Right, exactly. But my boss, who's on the executive committee, he is that champion. He's been there for 30 years. He thinks like a VC, he invests, but he is not a classic CPG. Very similar to probably you, where you train in some ways very classically, but you think very differently. He is my champion. So he and his executives, they know what we're doing, and he brings me in when he needs to, but he also lets me out there, and he deals with some of the hard battles, and then I deal with some of the hard battles, and my team doesn't, and so forth. So I think that's the way it works, and literally and figuratively. Literally, we're in New York. He's happens to be Miami. Our executive team is Oakland. So we're all in different places, but he's my connection point who allows us that freedom. And I think that's important in any of those models that we talked about, is to have that one person who has the clout, right? If you make it a manager level, it's not the same, right? It needs to be someone, it doesn't, nope.
Yeah, we call them ambassadors in our program. And they come in different flavors depending on the culture and how much blood is involved in protecting you. It's never. And sometimes it's not pretty to watch those guys try to protect you.
Well, and I think the key is it needs to be an operator, right? It can't be someone in a finance function or M&A. It has to be an operator, because then they're not close enough to the business, right? Then and
they don't have the clout. Yeah,
they don't. No, right, exactly.
You kind of got into a little bit about data. Anything else on personalization and customization? So in skincare, we're obviously seeing it, in droves with like Revive and selfie apps, and where people can actually either pick the specific products based on themselves and what the analysis that was done, or just there are customized products just for you, whether you're eating it or putting it on your body.
No question, it's the future. And I think customization comes in two folds, right? The physical product and manifested through the digital personalization, right? So the more I can know about you, the more that you volunteer for me, the more you're willing to tell me. And again, as we all know, data and collection of data and privacy is so critical, and will continue to be critical. So making sure you have all the checks and balances of like, are we collecting the right data? Are we letting people know what we're collecting and how we're using it versus not selling it? And then how do we put it into a product So it does truly feel customized. Dude, I think you hit on something that is the future. Customization at a personal level on the physical product standpoint
Yeah.
and digital standpoint when it comes to anything on my body and in my body, right? As you know, the old adage of around, on, and in, and as you know, going within, you're going to spend the most time in research and making sure it's right. So
Yeah.
why pay $5 or $100 for something that isn't customized for you? 10, 15 years ago, even 5 years ago, you and I would be like, well, nothing's customized for you. But now I think, especially the next 10, 15 years, like my daughter is 5. When she's 25, she's gonna be buying products that she can't fathom a world that she would buy a product that wasn't specific for her. She's gonna be like, why would you go to some grocery store and just buy something off the shelf? Like that's
Right.
insane, right? Like think about that. And I think that is the future of
Yeah.
wellness for sure.
Actually, she's going to be like, "What's a grocery store?"
Well, yeah, honestly, that too. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think supplements is a great place there. People say
Yeah.
makeup too, and skincare that is too, where you do custom serums, but the amount of supplements people take is just crazy.
Yeah.
And
And I think there'll be more all-in-one solutions for you again, specifically for you versus me, right?
exactly,
Something that gives you
that's
what you
what I meant.
need.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Jackson, I really want to thank you for being on. Since we were talking about entrepreneurs, maybe any parting thoughts about startups and entrepreneurs out there that are looking to kind of crack into your spaces.
Yeah. So, my earlier comments about it being challenging to keep talent, I didn't want to come across as if it's hard because you made that mention that, and that's a good point. It's a huge opportunity for startup and entrepreneurs right now, especially if you're starting something from scratch. This is the time, right? Maybe you were going to go back to school and that's no longer looking attractive to spend $50,000 to still be in your room all day. And maybe you work at a consultancy or you're a big CBD or retailer. You're like,
Yeah,
gosh, we're doing the same old shit and it's time to reinvent. This is the time to
exactly.
do it. Between
Yep.
Spotify, Shopify, and BigCommerce, it is so easy to launch anything digitally. And there's so many tools out there that you can start something for literally a matter of dollars, and it's so easy and cheap to market across all these channels. So to me, this is the best time to start something. I would say though, what we've learned from a couple things from the stories at WeWork and even Uber with Travis is, founders need to be thinking about their people and their talent all the time, and being not looking at them as a dollar sign, like, oh, I just got $20 million investment and this person is just a part of that. They have to treat them like humans and really reward them and encourage them and grow them and motivate them. I think that's where big companies are really good about that. They have good HR fundamentals about growing people and encouraging them. I think startups could be better there. If they figure that out and are honest and direct with their talent, there's so much more potential at working at startups. So what I learned in 2.5 years at Box, I mean, it was like 12 years of going to school. So I think the opportunity is pretty massive. I
Yep.
think the key though is for startups, it can't be grow at all costs. I mean, you know this more than anyone right now. 100% growth with no profitability or no path to profitability no longer works. If you're 5 million or 100 million, you still have to grow, but you still have to have some kind of path to get to profitability that isn't $500 million away. There has to be a way to get there. So if you're going 25 and 25, I think is arguably better than 100 and negative 20 in
Yep.
terms of growth and profitability. So I think that's the key balance is your people, but also having a path to profitability.
Yep. Perfect. Good words of wisdom. Thank you. Appreciate it. You've been listening
Thank you,
to
Dean.
Jackson Jeyanayagam from Clorox. It's good to see you. Hopefully
Thank you, Dean.
next time maybe we'll do this one in person.
Yeah, appreciate it. And good job on my name, by the way.
Oh, thanks. See you.